This is the Resilience Code, turning adversity into strength, one story at a time. I am your host, Arbaina, and if you ever have a story of your own, there's a link in my bio. After Forest, I wanted to talk about fire. Because every time you start feeling grounded, something always comes along to test how strong those roots are. For me, fires has always shown up as change. Sometimes it was the kind of change that I chose. Other times, often most times, it was the kind that chose me. I think everyone knows what that feels like, the moment that flip your life without asking first. You can sense it coming before it happens. Your conversations get shorter, you feel restless. The things that once worked start feeling heavy. And then one day, something happens and you realize, oh, this is it. The thing that I've been avoiding. That's fire. It's the moment you can't go back to who you were before. When I look back, almost every turning point in my life started with something burning down. A relationship that fell apart, a plan that didn't work out, a version of me that couldn't survive the next level. All the time, all these times, I thought those endings were failure, but they weren't. They were transitions. Fire doesn't always show up as chaos, sometimes it's very quiet. It's that feeling when you finally tell the truth after pretending for too long. It's when you realize you're done explaining yourself to people who never listen. And it's when you stop performing peace and finally start living it. That kind of fire doesn't destroy you, but instead, it frees you. The first time I really understood this was a few years ago when I lost almost everything I'd been building: my career, my money, my stability. It all collapsed at once. I was angry. I felt betrayed. I was working hard, doing everything I was supposed to do, and still everything fell apart. And at first, I tried to fix it, but nothing was working because the fire wasn't there to be fixed. It was there to force me to tell the truth. The truth was I was building a life that looked good on the outside and felt empty on the inside. I kept saying yes to things that didn't serve me because I didn't want to disappoint anyone. That season burned away every illusion I had about control. It was painful, but it was also very clarifying. When everything you've built starts falling apart, you start asking better questions. What is really mine? What am I pretending to love because it keeps the peace? Who am I when nothing is working? Those questions hurt, but they bring you closer to yourself than anything else. That's what fire does. It removes what is fake, so you can see what is real. And anger, as uncomfortable as it feels, is often the first spark. I was raised to avoid anger, to keep calm, to make everyone else comfortable. But the problem is, when you ignore your anger, it doesn't disappear, it just turns into resentment. And resentment always leaks everywhere. I had to learn that anger isn't evil. In fact, it's data. It tells you where your boundaries are being crossed. And it tells you what matters to you. It tells you that something is not honest anymore. When I stopped seeing anger as a flaw and started treating it as information, I became clearer about what I would and wouldn't tolerate. And that clarity changed everything. My relationships got healthier. My decisions got cleaner. And for the first time, I felt in control of my own energy instead of trying to manage everyone else's. Fire, when handled right, gives you direction. It tells you what to stop feeding and it shows you what can survive heat. That's how you find truth, not by avoiding conflict, but by standing in it long enough to understand what it's teaching you. The hardest part, though, is what comes after the burn. Once things end, there's this pressure of rebuilding right away, to fill the space, to prove that you are fine, that you hadn't just gone all through that. But growth doesn't start the moment the fire goes out. The ground has to cool down first. After that major burn in my life, I spent months feeling lost. I wasn't depressed, or maybe a little bit, but I was in recovery. But in our culture, we don't know how to honor recovery. We rush it. We give permission to hustle, but not rest. We call it laziness when it's actually healing. And I had to learn how to slow down. I am still learning how to slow down. To stop making productivity as a replacement for peace. That quiet period taught me patience more than any success ever could. And eventually, things started to grow back, but not the same way. What returned was smaller, simpler, more honest. And that's the beauty of starting over after a fire. You become deliberate. You don't rebuild out of panic. You rebuild out of peace instead. Fire may strip you bare, but it will also introduce you to yourself to find out what's solid. You find out who stays. And you find out that most burn doesn't mean that they don't come with you anyway. So if you're in the middle of your own fire right now, if you're watching something you love fall apart, This is your reminder. Don't mistake endings for punishment. Some endings are protection. Some endings are redirection. Some endings are the only way to get you to what's next. When the smoke clears, you'll see what survived. And that's what's real. That's where to build again. So today, I want to ask you, what's ending in your life that might be trying to free you? Where are you still pretending things are okay because you don't want to start over? And what would it look like to see your fire not as destruction but as direction? Resilience doesn't mean staying in what's burning. It means having the courage to step out, to breathe, and to trust that ground will still hold you. That's it for today's story. If it stayed with you, sit with it. If it helped, pass it on. And if you've got something of your own, the link's in my bio. You don't have to fix it, just name it. And always remember, resilience isn't pretending you're okay. It's about choosing, again and again, not to be hardened, but to be changed.